In the previous part, Lu Feng found another child willing to be recruited as a guild member, but this child had issues with their strength. However, as usual, Lu Feng could overcome it. So, how does the story continue? Let's begin. On that day, several players gathered in front of the gate. The leader of the expedition this time was one of our men. He stated that the mission to the D-level Shadow World would soon begin, but there were still 2 players who hadn't arrived yet. They would start when everyone was present. The 2 people being waited for turned out to be Lu Feng and Ziya. Finally, with confidence, they arrived and went straight to the team leader. The bald man immediately said that the 2 people left behind were a level 9 newbie and a level 24 fighter. The level 24 woman could join, while the newbie could not. Ziya immediately stated that the man was her boss. If the bald man didn't let him in, then everyone there was surprised to hear a level 24 Acqq admit a level 9 newbie as her boss. They wondered what was going on with the girl. She looked beautiful, but defending a newbie like that was unexpected. Finally, the bald man allowed Lu Feng to join the expedition. He always announced that they would all leave in 5 minutes. After the break time was over, the bald man led them all into this shadow world. As they stepped in, Ziya asked Lu Feng if a little kid was supposed to join them for training. Lu Feng replied that Leo couldn't come this time because he had to study. Ziya immediately felt sorry for the kid because the real world would become increasingly dangerous under the influence of the shadow world, but he still had to uphold his values in the real world. Then Ziya asked why the boy made their 7 companions join his group. Lu Feng replied that the next forced teleportation would be a major disaster. Only by joining his group could they enter the same shadow world and ensure each other's survival. Then the girl said if Lu Feng was just a level 9 newbie who couldn't protect himself from disasters, how could he protect 7 people at once? With a calm face, Lu Feng replied that the girl would soon know his true abilities. In a rush, they all entered the portal and teleported to a world entirely covered in snow. Just as they entered, someone complained about the cold. The place was the Grey Ice Field, a D-level shadow world. Ziya also complained about how cold it was. If she had known they were going to a place full of snow and cold like that, she would have worn more clothes. They all walked through the very cold forest. The bald leader asked if anyone had ever been to that place before. A pink-haired girl answered that she had never been there because it was a rare level and there was little information about it. As usual, they would encounter elite monsters and kill as many as possible. If there were magic crystals that could explode, they only had to attack the monster boss and leave. Suddenly, hundreds of beautiful blue butterflies appeared and immediately rushed towards them. Some people started to panic at the sight of the butterflies. Others just tried to flee, even though it was futile. The atmosphere became chaotic, the players ran, trying to save themselves. Lu Feng and Ziya stood calmly together. The young man explained that the butterflies came looking for warmth. If someone stayed in that place, they would soon see a sea of butterflies and freeze like the others. The bald leader ordered everyone to run out of the open space. The players who could still run tried to save themselves by running into the forest. They thought that 2 newcomers, Lu Feng and Ziya, would soon die because they remained silent under the siege of hundreds of butterflies. Finally, Ziya asked Lu Feng, aren't they going to leave? The girl suspected there must be treasure in that place, so her boss frightened the other players so they could take the treasure for themselves. Lu Feng said that wasn't the reason, but because the treasure could fly towards them. Ziya immediately started shooting at every frozen butterfly that came towards them. At that moment, Lu Feng explained that he wanted the girl to practice with such dangerous monsters. Ziya immediately screamed, asking if her boss was crazy, but the girl still tried to shoot the frozen butterflies coming towards them, even though it was very slow because she had to shoot them one by one. Lu Feng explained that in this training, the girl could only attack with physical bullets. Moreover, each physical bullet could only attack 1 butterfly. Ziya argued that it was impossible because the smallest physical bullet was the size of an egg, while all the butterflies came at once. Lu Feng immediately focused his mind, crossed his hands in front of his chest, and when he swung his hands forward, hundreds of shots were created, instantly incinerating hundreds of butterflies without leaving a single one. If Ziya hadn't seen that scene with her own eyes, she wouldn't have believed that beginner skills and mental intervention could be so useful. Then Lu Feng explained that the first thing to do was to compress the physical bullets to a certain level, and then compress them to the size of rice grains. So, with one compression, their mental control could become stronger. The second thing Ziya needed to do was to control the trajectory of the projectiles. Speed, angle, and strength all were essential in this technique. Ziya concentrated heavily as she tried to practice what Lu Feng had just taught. But even though she tried her best, she still found the technique very difficult. In the end, this girl could only try to shoot one small path. Lu Feng added that in the first training session, one only needed to kill 2,000 ice butterflies, so now he asked the girl to kill 2,001. Instantly, Ziya exploded, asking how Lu Feng could act like that. Ignoring Ziya's complaints, the young man climbed onto a fairly large tree branch, saying that he had been tired lately and needed more rest. He lay down immediately and said he would sleep first. but he still advised Ziya not to be lazy and to keep practicing. Ziya panicked about being left alone to practice with hundreds of very dangerous ice butterflies. In solitude, with a fearful expression, the girl asked if it was okay for her to fight against thousands of butterflies alone. Ziya ran from the swarm of butterflies, also urging Lu Feng to escape from that place, but the young man instead gave her a small bottle of purple potion. After Ziya drank the potion, the swarm of icy butterflies passed by her without any hindrance. Ziya was amazed and suspected it was a secret medicine, but Lu Feng explained that it was only a level F heat suppressant. However, the potion could suppress the heat emitted by the human body, so when the girl trained, she wouldn't trigger the swarm of butterflies. Ziya looked puzzled, so she asked if the young man had prepared this potion beforehand because he knew they would come to the gray snow field. Lu Feng said Ziya could ask, but she couldn't stop training. So the girl refocused on shooting every butterfly that came her way. As they continued to practice, Lu Feng mentioned that the Shadow Gate only showed the level of the Shadow World. Behind it, there were no famous clouds to be seen. Lu Feng answered that he knew all of this beforehand because he was equivalent to 99% of the Shadow World system. If someone had reincarnated in the Shadow World for 3 years, they could also find any Shadow World they wanted to go through information, laws, and formulas collected. Ziya still didn't understand the purpose of letting the young man reincarnate for 3,000 years. Besides, she didn't believe Lu Feng had lived for 3,000 years. Lu Feng reminded the girl to shoot 6 more butterflies. As they practiced and chatted, only a few other players remained. They wondered why the death rate of the Class D Shadow World was so high. The slave leader said the main reason was that most monsters in their world had ice attributes, making them too difficult to deal with. Suddenly, a rumbling sound came from the middle of the forest. It turned out that some basic red-colored insect monsters appeared in front of them. The slave leader immediately warned everyone to be careful. They struggled to deal with the monster attacks due to their large size. Moreover, the monster's large arms could kill them with just one swing. The bald leader was the only one who could jump high enough to cut off the monster's arm and defeat one of them. However, it took him a great effort to bring down one monster. The problem was more monsters were lurking around them, currently staring at them with hungry eyes. The bald leader realized he couldn't kill all those monsters alone. Suddenly, several more wild insect monsters appeared. Without hesitation, they immediately attacked the humans in front of them. Everyone ran in fear, screaming for help to be saved. The bald leader froze in place when faced with the elite class insects that had just arrived. On the other side, Ziya had completed Lu Feng's mission, but when she looked up at the tree, she was astonished to find her boss was no longer there. She was sure Lu Feng had another purpose for coming to the Shadow World. Back at the bald boss's location, only the bald boss and a pink-haired player remained. The girl looked very frightened under the onslaught of numerous insect monsters. As a man, the bald boss wanted to protect the female player, but when he bravely stepped forward to attack, he ended up immediately at the sharp and fierce end of the monster's arm. The only player left could only sit down crying. She couldn't even move under the threat of the monster's arm preparing to attack her. Fortunately, at this critical moment, Lu Feng arrived just in time to cut down the threatening monster. Not only one, Lu Feng even immediately cut down the entire body of the insect monster with unbelievable speed. The cutting speed was unexpected, as if cutting through extremely soft onions. The pink-haired player was amazed to see the newbie level 9's ability could be so strong. With one last insect monster remaining, Lu Feng attacked it from behind, asking it to bid farewell to its head. After all the monsters were successfully eliminated, the pink-haired girl thanked Lu Feng for his hard work, saving her life. Lu Feng took the monster's head while answering that it was just a coincidence because he had something else to do. Lu Feng carried the insect's head to the edge of the cliff, then he threw the insect's head down the cliff. The girl with pink hair asked what Lu Feng was doing. Lu Feng casually replied that he was baiting. Right after he finished speaking, a rumble was heard from below the cliff. Several creatures could be seen wriggling down there before a centipede-like insect climbed up the cliff. The girl was shocked to realize that the young man in front of her was luring out the last boss from its hiding place. What's even more terrifying, Lu Feng mentioned that he wasn't just luring out one boss, as there were 2 bosses in that place. The ground they stood on trembled and cracked as Lu Feng stopped speaking, revealing 2 centipede-shaped monster bosses crawling up from underground, eagerly awaiting to devour them. Lu Feng warned the girl with pink hair to retreat, as the 2 monster bosses were very fierce. Both bosses were the size of mountains, with terrifyingly sharp teeth. The girl with pink hair almost cried again when faced with the 2 extremely frightening monsters. She was confused about what to do in such a crisis. Suddenly, Lu Feng said that if the girl wanted to live, she just needed to get away from there because now he would step forward to fight them. The girl with pink hair tried to warn the young man not to play around with the monster bosses, but clearly Lu Feng wouldn't listen. The monster bosses shot sharp ice rains directly at Lu Feng. With a single swing of his sword, Lu Feng managed to deflect every ice crystal that came towards him. Several times he jumped to avoid the enemy's ice attacks. While continuously dodging the monster's attacks, Lu Feng kept trying to get closer to them until he finally climbed onto the head of the terrifying monster. The monster became even angrier and tried to knock the young man off its head, but Lu Feng remained steadfast. He stood right at a crucial point on the monster's head and then stabbed the hexagonal-shaped part with all his strength. This action caused an incredibly intense pain, making the creature writhe in agony. Seeing its sibling attacked like that, the other monster immediately tried to attack Lu Feng. But with his cleverness, the young man thrust his sword deeper until the second monster fell and the first monster couldn't touch Lu Feng's body. The first monster was so enraged that it went berserk, smashing its head into the ground and spinning around its sibling's body. The girl with pink hair was stunned to see Lu Feng's fighting ability, which was completely different from that of a newbie. Not even the edges of the young man's clothes were affected by the attacks. She even thought that Lu Feng was a god-class newbie. The ground shook again under her feet, collapsing due to the intense battle. As she retreated, the girl shouted that the newbie in front of her was truly insane. Lu Feng didn't give up. He thrust his sword once again above the head of the first monster and yelled for both monsters to just die. He even pulled his sword, continuously stabbing it into the monster's body. The slashes were so long that they almost split the monster's body in two. Not stopping there, he also decapitated the monster until both creatures were completely motionless. Finally, the system announced that the player was entitled to receive a level B item for killing the monster bosses in that place. The item was a Froze Blade, also known as the Frost Blade. The ability it could create was freezing. After attacking an enemy, the skill could slow them down and stop them. Lu Feng believed that the two swords were B-level weapons, not too bad compared to A-level weapons. Moreover, both swords were new weapons strong enough for him. Since the final boss of the Grey Ice Field dungeon had been defeated, the mission ended, and all the Awakeners still alive in that place would be teleported within 1 minute. A spear of light descended from the sky, preparing to carry all surviving players. The girl with pink hair was stunned to see the young man truly defeat the monster bosses, despite being a newbie. Xia also complained that it ended too quickly, as she was only short of shooting down 15 more butterflies. As the three of them finally emerged from the portal together, people were shocked to see that only 3 had survived. Xia still complained because she was just a little short of completing her boss's test. Lu Feng replied that if the girl met the requirements, he was confident that when they went to the next shadow world, Xia would become stronger. With enthusiasm, the girl asked if they would go to the next shadow world now. Lu Feng sauntered off, asking the girl to rest for a few days, as he also had things to take care of. Meanwhile, in her office, Anya had to face a middle-aged man who explained that he had worked with the old CEO for over 30 years. Just because a contract couldn't be negotiated once, Anya heartlessly dismissed the mature man. If this news spread, the good reputation of the deceased CEO would be ruined by his son. Sitting in the leader's chair, Anya sounded annoyed as she stated that now the man was trying to threaten her with the company's reputation. Yet Anya knew the man had been cheating in February of this year. He had invested in Muso Corporation to make a huge profit last September. With sharp eyes, Anya asked how much profit the man had made. Because Anya was too lazy to check, did she need to hand over evidence to the police. Hearing the word police made the man panic, and he immediately apologized to Anya. He begged her to see from the perspective of the previous CEO. Anya replied that it wasn't that she couldn't, but the man had spent all his money and sold all the company's shares, and claimed the company's property under his name, resulting in huge losses for the company. Thus, Anya demanded the middle-aged man compensate for all the company's losses. And for the sake of her father's name, the nursing home under the company would provide free beds for the middle-aged man until he died. This was the only kindness Anya could offer for the man's crime of betraying his company. The man had no choice but to agree and thank her while bowing. After he left the room, a female worker entered and reported to Anya that there was a man claiming to be her colleague and wanted to meet with her, but he had already left. He had come several times, so should they contact the police? Anya replied no, because the man was just a usual pervert. He couldn't possibly harm her. Anya would handle the man, so she asked the worker to leave. After the girl left, Anya stood in front of the large glass window, arranging the view outside. At that moment, she saw a young man walking on the sidewalk. Suddenly, the young man looked towards her office and waved with a cheerful smile. Next, Anya received a message from the young man, who was none other than Lu Feng, stating that he was sure the beautiful Anya was peeking at him from the window. Anya replied that the young man was strange because anyone could observe someone who offended them. Despite rejecting and calling Lu Feng names, in reality, Anya's face turned very red as the young man remembered all the small details about her habits. But Lu Feng had to swallow the bitter disappointment because the girl immediately blocked him after replying to his message. Lu Feng reluctantly accepted defeat. Meanwhile, Mr. Zhao replied to his message, saying that he was on a mission, so he couldn't respond to the young man's message anymore. Meanwhile, little Loli asked him to finish the math homework again. After that, they could discuss guild matters. Lu Feng remembered that Luo Fei was in Europe, Tao Tao was in Japan, Mr. Zhao lost connection, and Anew refused to meet him. Yet there were only 10 days left until the next disaster. He was confused about how to get these 4 people to agree to join his guild and ensure they would survive the disaster. This young man thought of considering using unconventional methods to recruit the other 4 members. Lu Feng was leading 3 people along a long toll road. Lang Yu, who was able to join them for training at the time, said that she only named Lu Feng's guild but did not participate in group activities. Lu Feng replied that he had already posted nomination mission to Lang Yu on the dark web. According to Killer World's rules, the girl could come. Lang Yu asked why the young man was looking for her late at night. Lu Feng replied that it was to take them to the training place. Now they have arrived at a military camp with very thick concrete walls and very tight security. Leo immediately knew that the place was a military headquarters, while Zia asked why Lu Feng said they had 7 friends, but why only the 3 of them went for training. Lu Feng replied that if anyone urged them, they would join it immediately, but it was still possible. Arriving at the entrance gate of the military headquarters, it was clear that the gate was tightly closed, but there was not a single guard in sight. Leo looked left and right, muttering why there were no guards at the entrance gate of the military headquarters. Lu Feng replied that he had hacked into the computer system of the entire military base. Therefore, the system warned of a leak of X-level Shadow World material. The base needed to be repaired immediately for 15 days, so everyone on the base had to be evacuated. So, that place was their ace in the hole for now. Ziya was sparkling because she felt she had followed the right person. Lu Feng not only had extraordinary strength but also was a super hacker. She was sure that besides giving birth to a baby, there was nothing her boss couldn't do. Lu Feng only replied that those days were so long that he had to spend time studying many confusing things. Then the young man placed his palm on the gate scanner, and the system immediately scanned it as the highest authority owner. Then the fortress gate opened with a welcome message from the system there. The 3 of them were eagerly awaiting Lu Feng's special training program. They immediately entered the astronaut simulation training room. Leo asked what place it was. Lu Feng answered that it was a place for training astronauts. Ziya became curious if they would go into space. Would they go to Mars to fight? Lu Feng went straight to the computer table there and started up the system. Lu Feng asked them not to think too much and just practice with astronaut equipment. Lang Yu said astronaut training meant nothing to her, so she didn't want to waste her energy on it. Nevertheless, after attending several training sessions, Lang Yu felt very addicted and wanted to do it again because she felt she could endure this very shaking training. Lu Feng said the girl's simulation aircraft had crashed, so he had to wait because Lu Feng would increase the fragmentation distance after the barrier stone exploded. Lang Yu asked if the predetermined training template could be changed and customized. Lu Feng answered while staring at the hologram screen in front of him that the purchasable template had been fixed, but the details could be changed through the program. Lang Yu was surprised and asked who Lu Feng was, because an ordinary hacker couldn't make changes like that to military template programs. Lu Feng explained again that to fill the so long time, he had been studying spacecraft design and the ecology of the universe for a while. The 3 were very bored, they had many strange hobbies just like him. Ziya screamed excitedly that this training was very interesting, because she felt weightless, could spin, and ride a spacecraft under all kinds of shocks. She was truly happy, and she thought it was very cool. Lu Feng warned the short-haired girl that she didn't come here to play games. The brain-based mode he deliberately chose for Ziya was special training to train her mental strength. Ziya understood that, so she would be more serious. Then she turned to Leo and said that the boy was still a little weak. After a long rest, Leo was still breathing heavily. She was worried that the boy would die from continued training like this, but Leo replied that he was still okay. Lu Feng said in survival methods, one must constantly avoid damage avoidance stones and energy storms that could enhance human spiritual power. So, in his opinion, this training was very suitable for people with supernatural abilities. The young man ordered them to concentrate because he would soon donate a sniper. Then he closed the hatch and immediately continued this training. When Lu Feng pressed a button, the training would immediately start again. They had to face great shocks just like when riding a spacecraft, right on the large screen in front of them. Everyone had to focus on defeating the enemies who seemed to be blocking them. Even Lang Yu had to endure as much as possible from the very strong shocks because the shock was so great that it could turn her body and make the tough girl scream in fear. Lu Feng appeared on Cleo's hologram screen to say that the combination of dual mode, mind, and focus greatly helped to control emotions. So, he reminded Leo of the breathing technique he had taught before so the boy could control his anger. Leo, who understood his senior's orders, immediately took a deep breath and exhaled slowly. After a few minutes of what felt like very long training, finally, the three of them finally came out of the training aircraft and collapsed in their respective places, vomiting several times. But Lu Feng said they had rested enough, so he asked them all to get up and continue their training. Although his voice trembled, Leo still replied that he would do his best. But Xia, who was used to being outspoken, immediately said that her boss was a demon, while Ling Yu just looked at her with sharp eyes. Now Lu Feng stared at them with equally sharp eyes. With a sly smile, Lu Feng said that he was a good person compared to the disasters the world would face. 1 week later, the three individuals entered the recovery chamber located in the medical room of the military base. Feeling sufficiently recovered, Ling Yu emerged from the healing chamber first and put on her clothes again. Lu Feng entered after the girl had dressed properly. He remarked that Ling Yu was the strongest among them, so he wanted to see her training results soon. Thus, they immediately moved to the mechanical war simulation field. After giving some brief instructions, Lu Feng pressed a button indicating the start of the trial. Instantly, hundreds of large dog-shaped robots surged towards Ling Yu. Realizing her enemies had arrived, the girl swiftly raised the long-barreled firearms in both her arms and began shooting at all the monster robots at an unbelievably fast pace. In her heart, the girl felt her performance was quite good as she didn't miss a single robot coming towards her. She was pleased because this time her training robots had a double speed mode. She then began improvising, using the head of one robot to jump high before shooting all the targets scattered beneath her. Ling Yu noticed the training robots were twice as fast as usual. The system indicated that the shooting ratio this time was 35%, the target locking speed reached 40%, and the target destruction frequency reached 42%. Lu Feng commented that the girl's performance wasn't bad, but she needed to pay more attention to her heart rate control after pulling the trigger. Next, they moved to the gravity experiment chamber. Xia laughed happily because now she was accustomed to zero gravity. In other words, the girl could fly within that special room, but the real test had just begun. Large iron balls scattered throughout the room began hurtling toward her, seemingly wanting to crush Xia's small body. But this time, the girl managed to hold them back only with the mental strength she possessed. Xia smiled happily because this test felt very easy for her. She could even control 6 giant iron balls simultaneously, making her even more confident. Lu Feng said from the control room that controlling 6 iron balls was very easy, so he would add 4 more at once. Immediately, Xia panicked upon hearing the young man's words because she felt her limit was probably only up to 10 iron balls. But Lu Feng still added 40 giant iron balls into the training room. Xia began to tire. She thought it was impossible to stop that many iron balls. The girl even felt she might not see her body intact again if she were hit by such large iron balls. But Lu Feng explained that the power of the mind was compressed to the extreme into the skull, then released in an instant. At that moment, Xia opened her eyes with full force. She screamed as a tremendous surge of power erupted from her mind. Not only did she manage to prevent each iron ball from attacking her, but she also succeeded in cracking the very thick iron balls. After all the iron balls stopped moving, Xia exclaimed how cool it was, and from now on, she was also a genius. Her mind power was on par with her boss's. With confidence, she even invited Lu Feng to conquer the world together. Lu Feng thought the girl was truly competent. She could also be an ace card for Lu Feng in the initial team. Next, Lu Feng moved to a special training room designed for Leo, equipped with very thick barrier layers. Several small bombs were placed in every corner of the room. Every time Leo couldn't control his wolf avatar, the creature could potentially be hit by the bomb explosion. But fortunately, so far, the boy's performance has been very good. He could control the monster to turn left, lie down to the right, and just make small jumps. But when he became a little careless, the monster jumped towards a bomb and was hit by the explosion. The monster fell and became unconscious. Leo also immediately sat down, saying he was truly useless. It was at this moment that Lu Feng entered the room and said Leo had made a lot of progress. Previously, the boy would go wild after manipulating the monster for 7 seconds, but now he could last for 3 minutes. Despite this, Leo argued that 3 minutes was still too short. Lu Feng asked him to calm down because as long as the creature's destructive power was strong enough, 3 seconds was enough to end the battle. The young man reached out to Leo to invite him to leave as the boy had also passed the test. They had all completed this training session. Outside the headquarters, Lu Feng informed the 3 of them that the training camp had ended. Everyone could go back and rest properly. Xia was the happiest as she could finally leave the fortress and head towards real combat. But Leo was very annoyed because it meant he had to do a lot of homework again. Ling Yu remained silent with her usual cold expression. Lu Feng thought there were only 3 days left before the Shadow World disaster would begin. This young man had reached level 13, but he didn't have enough time left, so he had to use the last 72 hours to level up. That morning, Lu Feng was awakened by the loud ringing of his phone. As soon as he picked up, his sister's voice echoed so loudly that it almost burst his eardrums. Lu Yao said she wouldn't let him work for her anymore from now on. Annoyed, the girl asked what her brother had been doing all night. Lu Feng lazily replied that he had been working for his sister and only fixed a few things. Lu Yao grumbled angrily because her brother had fixed all the household items that couldn't be fixed. Not to mention he fixed other people's cars, fixed the exoskeleton, and even gave acupuncture to others. Lu Feng could only awkwardly smile and explain that he had too much free time. Lu Yao scolded her brother, saying she was a hard worker in the store, so she asked him not to come back home and just keep working. Lu Feng gently replied that he wanted to make things easier for his sister, but before he could finish speaking, the call was unilaterally ended by his sister. Lu Feng was surprised that his sister wasn't satisfied with having a great brother like him. Next, a message appeared from little Loli reminding him to help with homework in 10 minutes. But Lu Feng replied that he was a bit busy today. Little Loli was slightly disappointed because if he helped her with her homework, she would join his group. Lu Feng explained that he didn't have time because he was going to level up in the shadow world today. He gave little Loli the option to join him, so little Loli asked if he would help with her homework while leveling up. Lu Feng just replied for the child to join him. Lu Feng had to hurry up and level up because there were only 2 days left before the monster invasion. In the shadow world of Class C, they are currently in the city of Deadhead. The place is terrifying because there is a very large moon that is red and many bats are flying in its dark sky. While walking along the pathway, Lu Feng asked if little Loli was not curious why the shadow world with many entrance gates is very rare. Could Lu Feng know and be located right in front of the little witch's house? While staring at the laptop in her hand, little Loli answered that no one would care about that because what she cared about was Lu Feng helping her with homework. Suddenly, some townsfolk appeared before them. These people looked suspicious, so Lu Feng asked little Loli to get ready to start the fight. This young man was immediately on guard, displaying his full strength aura. The strange townsfolk suddenly growled loudly before their bodies transformed into werewolves. Little Loli was quite surprised to see the appearance of the large-bodied werewolf monsters in front of them. As the werewolf monsters ran to attack them, Lu Feng stepped forward with his frost sword. The sword's attack was strong enough to directly slash the thick neck of the werewolf monster. After one monster was defeated, several more werewolf monsters appeared. Lu Feng immediately asked Little Witch to add 2 buffs to him, then an increase in silver attribute attack, and holy blessing. While granting Lu Feng's request to add power to the young man, little Loli asked if he could do it himself. With his usual flat expression, Lu Feng replied of course. Then this young man ran as fast as lightning, slashing every werewolf that came at him. Armed with 2 swords in both hands, this young man seemed to be dancing while continuously slashing every werewolf. Because of this fight, Lu Feng's level increased by 1 point. After adding 2 buffs, not only did his attack power become stronger, but the young man even increased 1 level in a short time. Every time he killed a werewolf, the EXP value he got was at least 5 times higher than the original. This double buff stack was targeted at the werewolf. Now the little witch understood that Lu Feng deliberately brought her to the shadow world just to be a tool for leveling up. Meanwhile, the promise to help the little girl with her homework was just a lie. While fighting, Lu Feng still had time to say that it was true he brought the little girl to help him add buffs, but it was also true that he wanted to help with little Loli's homework. So he allowed the girl to ask questions about her assignment. Little Loli immediately said it is known that B, C, D, and E are 5 short period elements whose nuclear charge numbers increase alternately. So what is the answer to that question? Lu Feng said that it's a very simple problem, so little Loli should be able to solve it herself. Learning is about thinking for yourself before you can grow, so don't think about relying on others before you can solve such an easy problem. The little witch immediately became angry and threw her laptop upon hearing an answer that did not match the problem she had. She thought Lu Feng was lying to her. After the fight was over, Lu Feng approached the little witch and asked for 2 acceleration buffs. With annoyance, the girl replied that Lu Feng had already killed all the monsters. But why did he still want to waste his magical energy? Lu Feng answered without guilt that the monsters in that place had already been cleaned up, so of course, they had to move to the next place. While adding buffs to Lu Feng, little Loli walked alongside him and asked if she was brought to that place just to be a tool. Lu Feng did not answer the little witch's question. They continued to run as fast as they could until they finally reached the edge of the cliff. As they looked down the cliff, they could see many skeleton creatures spreading out while covering their bodies with black cloaks. Little Loli knew that those creatures were high-level mages, so it was too dangerous for a newbie like Lu Feng to be in that place. But Lu Feng said that the ISP of those creatures was much higher than that of werewolves, so clearly those creatures could quickly level up. Little Loli asked, in this shadow world, how many levels does Lu Feng want to upgrade? The young man casually answered 21 levels. The little witch was immediately shocked because to awaken so many levels at once, the higher the level, the more EXP he needed. She suspected that Lu Feng would stay in that shadow world for a week. Lu Feng immediately replied that he only had 24 hours. Little Loli immediately said that the young man must be joking. How could someone gain so many levels in such a short time? Lu Feng replied that this time he would use 3 types of buffs, namely Holy Blessing, Light Attack, and Lightning Bolt. Little Loli immediately became angry and said that the young man seemed to forget that he invited the little witch to help him with his homework. The little witch also said that she had been working on these tasks for a long time, but she couldn't complete them either. So could Lu Feng help her now? Little Loli began to read the task she was supposed to do. It is known that A, B, C, and E are 5 short period elements with increasing atomic charges sequentially. The atomic radius decreases in the order D, E, B, C, and A, B, then E both are the same group. Lu Feng jumped off the cliff while saying that the problem was very easy and he would answer it immediately. After the opponents realized his presence, Lu Feng immediately swung his sword and began the mass slaughter. Even though the creatures could use magic, they were no match for Lu Feng. The young man continued to swing his sword like a composer waving his baton. So in a short time, his level increased again. Little Loli, who saw that the young man was only focused on fighting, thought more and more that she was deceived again. So the little witch screamed while asking where Lu Feng's answer was. As he continued to eliminate every monster he encountered, Lu Feng asked little Loli to look at the marbles on the opposite wall. When she looked, the girl found a shining sword scratch, and when she looked more closely, it turned out to be the answer she wanted. Little Loli immediately shouted in surprise, realizing how that lewd young man could write the answer in such a short time while still fighting too.